All right, guys. So today we are going to look at continue looking at conservatism. I'm sorry, I always say that wrong. But if you are in your notes, flipping through your notes, it's Standard 8.4, the conservative movement. We're still finishing up the first page. Under the main idea on the left-hand side, it is the events that created conservatism. And if you recall, we've already done the numbered portion of this, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, we're going to start with conservatism rises out of the Vietnam War. So, the Vietnam War further divided the country into conservative hawks and liberal doves. Conservatives were enraged by protests and marches that could be seen on the nightly news. Again, remember, the power of the television, the power of the media at this point in time is still relatively new, and people are really using that imagery to their advantage. The fall of Vietnam to communists in 1975 intensified many conservatives' anti-communist worldview and feared that America was losing its place as a world leader. Again, think back to that reoccurring concept that we've had since the early 1900s, okay, with Teddy Roosevelt and the Roosevelt Corollary and the Monroe Doctrine, and this idea that America is this international police force, right, that we are responsible for protecting democracy and promoting democracy throughout the world, right? Well, with the fall of Vietnam to communism in 75, these conservatives are very fearful that we are no longer the big dogs on the block. And let's see. The counterculture of the anti-war movement contributed to a sexual revolution of the 60s that further alienated these conservatives. Remember, conservatives, the way things used to be, the good old days, that sort of family value, rich lifestyle. They felt that there was a decline in these family values because there was increased drug use, there was a higher divorce rate, and there was an increase in the number of unmarried people living together at the time. Again, all things that conservatives tend to not be okay with or support. Okay, so conservatism under Nixon. Richard Nixon was a Republican conservative, and we have this sort of new right develop, okay? And that's businessmen who oppose environmental protections as a job-killing limit on their economic freedom, and people who were united in their opposition to abortion. And if you recall, we talked about that in how abortion and conservatism rose out of that women's rights movement on Friday. Fundamentalists and evangelical churches became the cornerstone of this conservative movement, okay? This rise of conservatism. Televangelists and radio personalities use the media to reach missions. People like Billy Graham. I'm sure you guys are too young to remember any of his speeches or see anything, but he did pass away recently, and so I think maybe some of you may have seen him on the news in the past couple of months. But either way, he's a televangelist, and that's an evangelical preacher who really used the power of the media and the television to reach audiences throughout the world. By the 1980s, cable TV, the 24-hour news cycle, as in you can turn to some channel on the TV at any minute of the day and there is some news broadcast going on. And then, so again, that cable TV, that 24-hour news cycle, and political talk shows intensified this feelings of partisanship. Okay, and partisanship is just sort of a division. So all of those things contributed to this sort of very distinct division between the left and the right wing. And again, really quickly, the left wing is the liberal, more democratic wing. The right wing, I apologize, I should have said that before. The right wing is the more conservative Republican wing. We talk about them in like wings, left wing, right wing, because it's more of a spectrum, a political spectrum, rather than one or the other. But either way. So we see now we have this change to Democrats, okay? Nixon resigned because of Watergate and was pardoned by President Ford. We talked about that last week. And this was an extensively covered by the media and led to the election of Democrat Jimmy Carter in 1976. So again, we see a major transition here. Jimmy Carter is from Georgia. He many people refer to him as the peanut farmer. He's still alive today. And I'm sure some of you have probably seen him on a news broadcast. So in Carter's administration, Carter was beset with economic problems with the Vietnam War and the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. We had double-digit inflation, and again, we talk about inflation, those raising in price tags, why you don't get a McDouble for $1 anymore, or the dollar menu is not really $1 anymore, that sort of thing. Energy crisis, and we had an eroded middle-class prosperity. And what I mean by that is when something erodes, it sort of breaks away, right? We know what the middle class is. And then prosperity is that idea that you're doing well, right? If you're prospering, you're doing well. So that whole idea of the middle class prospering, you're doing well, is starting to erode or break away, starting to sort of dwindle, okay? And that undermined the support for social welfare programs. The stage was set for change. However, whenever Carter was unable to end the Iran hostage situation. All right, now we see Reagan shortly after, okay? Ronald Reagan campaigned on patriotism and a can-do attitude. He was a Western star from California. He was widely known, widely admired. TV coverage of the return of the hostages on the day of his inauguration really supported this, okay? So those hostages were let go on the day of his inauguration, and that really, really helped him. And in terms of actually his political campaign, I should mention this, was Let's Make America Great Again, which I'm sure you all are familiar from the 2016 election, Trump borrowed. So then we have the Reagan Revolution, and this is going to be the last one that we are going to talk about today. Reagan cut taxes for the wealthy to promote investment and the creation of jobs, okay? He cut government spending, and he thought that if the wealthy had more money, then prosperity would trickle down to the rest of society. And that goes back to that first bullet up there of cutting taxes for the wealthy. Ideally, he thought as the rich invest in building factories and hire workers, more money would trickle down, okay? I'm going to put this sort of in layman's terms for you guys. Many people, Reaganomics is what this is sometimes referred to, or the trickle-down theory, trickle-down economics, those sorts of things. It's all referring to the same concept, okay? And what it is suggesting that by providing tax breaks or cutting taxes, lowering taxes for the wealthy, right? The top, however many percentage, maybe top 1% of Americans, right? Top earning 1%. And guys, I know it's kind of hard to fathom because none of us are definitely the top 1%, but those people that are making millions and millions and probably even some making billions of dollars a year, right? Okay? By cutting taxes for those people or lowering the amount of taxes that they have to pay, they will then take that money that they're no longer spending in taxes and spend it in investments and businesses that will, in effect, hire the lower classes, right? So those people that they're not spending their money on taxes anymore, right? It's not going to the government. Instead, it's still in their pockets. Well, the idea is that they then spend that money on creating a new business, and when you open a new business, you need employees, right? So they will then hire these employees, and that will sort of trickle the wealth down from the top to the bottom and sort of spread the money out. And that is sort of the sum of trickle-down economics. I'll do my best to explain it when we come back tomorrow, and we can talk about it and make sure we all understand. But that is essentially Reaganomics. And a sort of a cornerstone of his presidency, okay? And he found support among fiscal conservatives who were opposed to the New Deal, okay? Fiscal conservatives are conservatives who don't want to spend too much money, particularly this cut government spending second bullet portion here, okay? So again, that's where we're going to stop today.